2 million years ago, our ancestors were unstoppable. They sprinted across the savannah at 40 miles an hour, their small brains, the size of a fist, powering lightning decisions. They built shelters from bones and hides, sang around campfires, and raised families that lived long enough to see their grandchildren. Life was savage, but it was also simple, healthy, and full of wonder. Then one day, everything changed. They stopped chasing and killing animals. They stopped devouring the flesh of lions, elephants, and wild cattle. Instead, they began growing food in fields, grain, vegetables, domestic animals they raised like pets, and in doing so, they accidentally wrote the first chapter of civilization, while quietly rewriting their own biology forever. This is the story of the real reason ancient humans stopped eating meat. It's not what we're taught in school. It's not about progress or technology. It's about a single, brilliant, heartbreaking shift in how humans fed themselves, and the unexpected gifts and curses that came with it. Stick with me for the next 15 minutes, because what you're about to discover will make you look at your dinner plate in a completely different way, and maybe even change how you see the world we live in today. Let's travel back to the beginning. For most of human history, roughly 2.5 million years, our ancestors were not herbivores. They were not carnivores either. They were something brand new in the animal kingdom. The first species on Earth that could thrive on both plants and meat in almost equal measure. They were omnivores with a twist. Around 2.6 million years ago, right here in East Africa, something extraordinary happened. The climate was drying out. Grasslands exploded across the landscape. Trees were shrinking. And with them, the old ways of life were dying. Our ancestors had to adapt. Fast. That adaptation came in two parts. First, they invented stone tools, sharp, flaked edges that let them butcher animals and crack open bones. Second, they started eating the marrow inside those bones. That marrow wasn't just fat. It was pure calorie energy packed with essential fats, minerals, and vitamins our bodies had never needed before. Thanks to that extra energy, their brains began growing. Not slowly, like chimpanzees, explosively. Within a few 100,000 years, Homo erectus, our direct ancestors, had brains the size of a modern human's small child. They could think abstractly. They could plan. They could invent language. They could walk for miles carrying babies on their backs, while carrying spears in their hands. Meat wasn't just food, it was rocket fuel for the human brain. But here's what almost nobody tells you. That same rich diet that gave us bigger brains also made our digestive system smaller. Less gut. Less expensive tissue. More energy for everything else. Our ancestors literally traded bulk for brain power. They became leaner, faster, smarter, and far more dangerous predators than any animal that had come before. They were the most successful meat eaters the world had ever seen, until the moment they didn't need to chase their food anymore. Fast forward 2 million years. The last ice age ended. The climate got warmer and wetter. Forests thickened. Wild game was still plentiful, but the old ways of life were starting to strain. Human populations were growing. Groups were settling near water sources. And then, in a handful of places across the globe, first in the Fertile Crescent, later in China, Central America, and parts of Africa, something impossible happened. They began domesticating animals. Goats, sheep, cattle, pigs, dogs, even chickens and ducks. For the first time in history, humans stopped following their food. They began following the food they themselves grew. This was the moment that changed everything. No longer did they have to run down a gazelle for hours until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could simply pen up a young goat, and let it multiply. They could grow wheat in the same soil where wild grasses once grew. The land gave back. Predictably, year after year. Population exploded. Villages became towns. Towns became cities. The world shifted from nomadic bands of 50 people to entire nations of millions. Writing was invented. Cities rose. Temples were built. Empires rose and fell. All because humans chose to stop chasing meat, and start raising it instead. So that's the real reason they stopped eating meat. Not because they got tired of hunting. Not because the animals ran away. But because they got smarter. They figured out a better, more stable way to feed themselves. And the change was total. By 10,000 years ago, in many parts of the world, meat from wild animals had dropped from 3,070% of calories in the old hunter-gatherer diet to something far less central. Wild game became a luxury. What remained was usually from domesticated herds, steady, reliable, and grown right outside the village walls. It was a genius move, until it wasn't. Because here's the part that still blows minds today. The same shift that gave humanity cities and writing also handed us the seeds of modern disease. Once humans stopped moving, once they settled, started drinking from the same water sources, and lived in close contact with their animals, parasites and infections exploded. New diseases, like tuberculosis, measles, and smallpox jumped straight from domesticated animals into human bloodlines. Sanitation broke, diets became more uniform. And as populations grew denser, and more sedentary, chronic health problems began to rise. Our ancestors traded the freedom and variety of the wild for the certainty of the farm, and in doing so, they gave up some of the raw physical resilience they had evolved over millions of years. But that's not the whole story. The real, long-term story, the part that will blow your mind, is how meat shaped the very structure of human civilization. In ancient times, meat was never just calories, it was power. In tribal societies, the hunter who brought down the biggest animal was the leader. He was the one whose family was fed first. He was the one who could marry the most beautiful women. Meat was status. Meat was prestige. Meat was what separated the strong from the weak. When that meat came from your own livestock instead of the wild, the power structure changed forever. The man who owned the most cattle wasn't necessarily the best hunter. He was the man who could protect his herd, feed his family, and survive the winter. His children inherited the land. His sons grew up knowing they would never have to chase down an animal. They could simply point to the stable and say, "Here's your breakfast." That single change from hunting to herding is what created the first-class divisions. The rich versus the poor. The settled versus the nomad. The farmer versus the warrior. And those class divisions, those social hierarchies, those permanent rules about who gets what, are still with us today. Meat didn't just change food, it changed society. It changed economics. It changed politics. It changed every single institution we still use 10,000 years later. You want to know why empires rose and fell? Look at the meat. In the Fertile Crescent, the first cities were built around grain and livestock. Kings claimed the best pastures. Priests blessed the first-born animals. The pharaohs of Egypt rode in chariots, pulled by oxen. The warriors of Mesopotamia fought over grazing rights. Without the ability to store and transport meat reliably, none of that complex world order could have existed. Meat made civilization possible, but meat also made the environment suffer. As human populations exploded, the wild game that our ancestors once hunted in such huge numbers began to disappear. Forests were cleared for farmland. Rivers were dammed. Oceans were fished to the edge of collapse. And every time we removed animals from the wild and replaced them with domesticated ones, we altered the entire balance of nature. The very meat that gave us bigger brains and bigger societies quietly poisoned the planet that made them possible. This is the full picture. Ancient humans stopped eating meat because they found a better, more stable, more efficient way to survive. They gave up the chase so they could build empires, write books, invent mathematics, and raise entire populations in one place. They traded wild freedom for domesticated certainty. And in doing so, they created the world we live in, while also planting the seeds of modern health crises, social inequality, and environmental damage that still haunt us today. Every time you eat a steak, a chicken breast, or a slice of ham, you're eating the direct descendants of that decision. You're eating the food that helped build Rome, Egypt, China, and every empire that followed. You're eating the calories that once powered brains twice as large as ours. You're not just eating meat, you're eating history. And the next time you see a wild animal in the forest, a deer, a wolf, an eagle, remember this. We stopped hunting them not because we lost the ability. We stopped because we chose to. Because we got smarter. Because we found a better way. And because, for the first time in millions of years, humans got to decide what their future looked like. So the real reason ancient humans stopped eating meat wasn't laziness, it wasn't cruelty, it was brilliance. They looked at their world, looked at their bodies, looked at their future, and said, we can do better. And they did. They built the civilization that now lets you sit down to dinner and talk about this very topic on YouTube. They gave us everything we have, including the choice to change it again. The question isn't whether we should go back to hunting. The question is whether we can finally learn the lesson they learned so long ago, that the most powerful animals on Earth are the ones who stop chasing their food, and start creating it instead. Thank you for watching. If this video made you look at your dinner plate in a new light, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really does help the algorithm understand what we're trying to explain. Drop a comment right now. What's one thing you're going to change about your own diet after hearing this? And if you want more deep dives into the mysteries of ancient humans, animals, and the secrets of our past, smash that subscribe button, and turn on notifications. We upload every week. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, remember, the most important animals we ever domesticated weren't the ones we raised for meat, they were each other. And that, my friends, is the real story behind why we stopped chasing meat and started building a world.